we are here today to sign legislation which will provide an additional $10.9 million in grant resources for small businesses throughout San Francisco. And let me tell you why that is so significant. When we first closed down over a year ago, people who had businesses like hair salon, nail salons, nightlife venues, places like a lot of these locations here in Japantown, they basically had to close and figure out how they were not only going to take care of their business and pay the rent, they had to figure out how they were going to support and feed their families. It took a while for us to get it together to make sure that we were in a situation where people were okay financially. We had to save lives in the decisions we made, but more importantly, we had to think about other ways in which we were going to support our businesses. So the city stepped in and, of course, deferred fees, tried to provide some immediate relief at first, specifically starting with Chinatown, which was hardest hit because of the discrimination and the xenophobia that happened even before we declared a state of emergency. We provided relief to the African American community specifically with a number of grants and loans, Mission District and the Latino community, a revolving loan fund, places that we knew under no circumstances could open because of COVID. Now, the reason why the $10.9 million that we're announcing today is so significant because it would be provided as grants for many of these businesses, anywhere between $5,000 and $25,000 per grant. And this is for businesses that in some cases during this last year couldn't open for at least 6 months. Businesses like those hair salons, the barbershops, nightlife venues, and a number of other places that continue to struggle, and even restaurants that didn't have the capacity to set up an outdoor shared space or didn't have the support and resources to do the whole delivery systems that some people were able to do. We know that getting access to those PPP loans from the federal government were difficult. We know that access to unemployment was challenging. We know that here in San Francisco, we had to make adjustments. We have already seen that so many businesses have closed their doors for good. Many of you know that I grew up in this neighborhood. I grew up hanging out around here, Japantown Bowl, right across the street. And I know that this is an active community. It's not just an active community for people who live here. It's an active community for people who visit one of the largest Japantowns anywhere in the country. And so they suffered a lot. Many of the places in here were not open. And we wanted to make sure that when we provided relief, it wasn't just relief that was going to serve businesses that also had access to other resources. It was going to serve those mom and pop businesses that we need to make sure as we recover as a city that they are also able to join us in that recovery as well. Many of these are family-owned businesses. They also hire people in San Francisco. I love walking around San Francisco and popping my head in Japantown or any of our other commercial corridors where the people who work there are the people who have probably worked there for generations. And that's why this is so important. We have to make it easy for people to have resources to stay in business in this city. And so today, signing this legislation will ensure that it goes into effect right away, that instead of taking all day to get money to small businesses, we're able to get them a check as soon as possible. We're not here to micromanage how they use it. We know they have employees. We know they have expenses. We know they may need to pay back rent. Whatever they need to do, we need to be there to support them. In San Francisco alone, we've provided resources to small businesses that have been over $1 billion. That doesn't even include the state and federal resources. That includes fees that we've not just deferred, but fees that we've paid off that businesses owed to the city because they weren't making money to pay the city in the first place. So we have to make sure that we're thinking about that because we sacrifice so much. We sacrifice so much because in San Francisco, when we closed down this city, we all did our part. We wore our masks, we socially distanced, we stayed away from our family and friends for the most part, and now San Francisco has much to celebrate. We're one of the densest cities in the country with one of the lowest rates of infection and the lowest death rates anywhere in this country. And over 50% of San Franciscans have been vaccinated. That's more than the state and national average. San Francisco, we should be proud of how far we've come. And we did that because we all played our part. Now, it's time for us to come back. We're a strong, resilient city. And when we come back, we're going to come back stronger and more resilient than ever before. And this $10.9 million is just a start. It's what we need to do along with so many other things that are going to bring our businesses back, that are going to bring our economy back. The city will do its very best to invest resources, but we also need the customers and the people to start to shop local and to return to the businesses that we all know and love. So before we sign this legislation, I want to ask Grace, who's with the Community Business District here in Japantown, to come up and say a few words about some incredible businesses and the work that we are doing to really revitalize this community, because I was just here 2 weekends ago. It was busy. There were lines. People were here. They were supporting businesses, and I'm so glad that you all are here joining us today. So after this legislation is signed, I'm hoping you'll go in here, have lunch, and start shopping. So thank you so much. Grace?
Thank you, Mayor, and welcome, everyone. Welcome to Japantown, and Mayor Breed, welcome back to J-Town. We are also honored to be here today to stand behind the mayor as she signs the legislation for the Small Business Recovery Act, something that is so important for our small businesses, especially our retailers who've really had the hardest time here during this pandemic. Who would have thought that when shelter in place went to effect last March, that we would have to wait, 1 year would have to pass. Yet our community is resilient, and as the mayor said, San Francisco is resilient as well, and we'll come out of this. The Japantown Community Benefit District has worked closely with a lot of our community partners, such as Rich Hashimoto from the Japantown Merchants Association, Steve Nakajo and Sandy Mori from the Japantown Task Force, and many other organizations here, really putting our efforts together to help our small businesses, because without them, J-Town wouldn't be J-Town, and we need them to survive. Mayor, if times were normal, you'd be down here to do the kickoff for the Cherry Blossom Festival. Unfortunately, we won't have a physical event, but it'll be done virtually. And if you walk by the Peace Plaza, they have a tent up. They're going to have a hanami, which is cherry blossom viewing. And got to thank the Rec and Park folks for, prettying up that area. It looks beautiful. We also have to give huge appreciation to the mayor's office, the Office of Economic Workforce Development, the San Francisco Department of Health, SFMTA, and many others who really helped us get the tools we need to keep our small businesses alive and thriving. So with that, thank you very much, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Grace. And, sometimes I get a little comfortable when I come back to Japantown because it is like home. I was a supervisor as well in this district. And so many great people, so many familiar faces. And so I'm so glad to be here. I was just at Kasura 2 weeks ago because now, since COVID, I've went from having 0 plants to having over 31. And so it's one of those things, I don't know, it's a better habit to have than most, put it that way. And they have some great stuff in there. And so the owner is with us today. So a business like hers will also receive access to the grant resources that we have available. Richard Hashimoto has been an incredible leader managing this area. He's the president of the Japantown Merchants, has been for many, many years, and Sandy Morey. Steve Nakajo, who's also on the Fire Commission, so many incredible people, incredible leaders. They work so tirelessly for this community, and I'm so grateful for their service and grateful to have them all here today. So with that, let's sign this legislation.
I'll take my check now. Yeah.